Welcome, everyone, to In the Hot Seat. For our repeat viewers, thank you for joining us again. For those new to the show, every 2 weeks we put an industry expert and or customers into the hot seat for some lively discussion and debate as we humanize the digital experience. All aspects of the customer lifestyle are up for discussion, as well as the technologies used throughout each phase of the journey. In this episode, we're going to discuss ERP modernization and its pitfalls with our guest, Dan Aldridge. Now, Thomas, I wanted to start with a quick little story that happened to me a year ago. A friend of mine worked for an ERP company in the sales organization, and he was working with one of their implementation partners responding to an RFP, and they worked for weeks and weeks, and they came to the conclusion that they couldn't respond to everything that the customer wanted. In fact, they didn't think anybody could. And so what they did, the approach they took, was to take more weeks and weeks and weeks to come up with like a response that would help the client indicate why they couldn't respond, which is kind of an oxymoron maybe, but in any case, what had happened was the client sort of like looked at what all the vendors offered and said, I'll take some of this and I'll take some of that, and they put it into a set of requirements that nobody could respond to. And these guys actually won the deal because they sort of helped the customer understand that you've got to really understand what it is your requirements are first, and then we'll find a solution that can do that, not the other way around. And so they chose this company to help them implement whatever it would be that they could provide, because they valued that sort of that helpful approach. So I think that might be a really important lesson here in this space. As complexity goes up, you're looking, the value that your vendors can provide really has to do with managing that complexity, not necessarily any bell or whistle in particular.
I guess all of us have some war stories about that, but yours pretty much summarizes actually one and a half key ingredients to not so successful modernization. So one is just take a menu of different offerings and mix them, which doesn't lead to a good cooking recipe. And the other one is just use what you have and do it again, which doesn't lead to modernization as well. So I guess there are bunches and bunches of different scenarios that will lead to success or not success. But guess what? I guess we are speculating here. So actually with Dan, we have an expert over here. So let me briefly introduce him. So he is in ERP for 25 years. So means he's an old star. So in this time, he has worked as an executive, as a consultant, and that in not only one environment, but 3 different ERP environments: Bahn, Info, and Priority. So he has also been an entrepreneur. So means built his own consulting business and helped companies achieve modernizations. That was Performer Hubs. So now he managed more than 200 ERP consulting projects. He has run multiple management consulting, business process improvement, enterprise digital transformation, and audit projects. So consequently, he knows his stuff. So let's bring him just in before I get over the top here with introducing you. Hi, Dan. How are you?
Hi, how you doing, Thomas?
Let's directly dig into it. So
yeah, what would be helpful for me, Dan, is if we could start with sort of what is ERP modernization? Is it different than transformation? And as you move to the cloud, doesn't this just take care of itself, right? Doesn't just everything magically go away? Give me your perspective. Let's just start with sort of how you look at the definition of ERP modernization.
Yeah. So first of all, it doesn't go away. it doesn't just take care of itself, not at all. The second thing is
that was spoiler alert. You're supposed to say that before anyway, go ahead.
Sorry, I had to lead with that.
Right.
So I would say there's kind of a hierarchy of business transformation kind of at the top, right? This is the whole banana that you're trying to do with the organization. You're trying to bring them into the latest. So technology is a part of that, but not the biggest part and not the most important part. So you have people with the things like organizational change management, and then you have processes, business process management, workflows, things like that. And then finally, you get down to the ERP system itself, which is the technology. So I would say that ERP modernization is kind of a subset even of digital transformation, right? So you have business transformation, digital transformation, which is nothing but really business transformation with digital tools, I like to say, which is transformation, in and of itself. And then ERP modernization is part of that whole project, right? So it is absolutely not taking care of itself with a cloud upgrade. As a matter of fact, if you do a cloud upgrade right, in my opinion, it brings in all the business process modernization. And you have these various levels, right? You have brownfield, which is kind of just taking the whole system and migrating it to the cloud, without doing any kind of rationalization of customizations or anything like that. Then you have greenfield, which is cleaning the core, basically just migrating standard, and then worry about it on the back end, right? You use some sort of development tools to recreate customizations at the back end. And then you have a hybrid, which is what I prefer, which is, I guess, sometimes called blue field, which is a combination of both, right? So you're selectively bringing over data, you're selectively bringing over systems, and so on. Okay, so that's ERP modernization, different flavors, if you will, of ERP modernization. But ERP modernization is definitely a subset. It definitely doesn't take care of itself. And it's part of a larger look, right? You look at CRM, you look at, maybe e-commerce, you look at, if you're in manufacturing, you look at MES system. There's a lot of different things you can look at for the organization as a whole, right? It's part of the mix.
Let me rephrase what you just said. Basically, and I'm the mean guy here. The good cop is Pete, right?
Maybe we don't have a good cop.
It's fine.
You basically called every SaaS vendor a liar.
Okay.
Because what they are saying is they are taking care of upgrades, modernization, and all this stuff, and you are saying they are not. So where's the gap in understanding?
Wow. I've never been accused of calling all of them a liar before.
Well, there's a first for everything.
Yeah, right. There's first for everything. I would say that, the ideal is a cloud migration that can take care of all your functionality and everything and bring it to the cloud, and then they maintain it. So they maintain your applications, they upgrade them when, it's a multi-tenant situation, they upgrade everything for you. So they would say they take care of that for you. But the path to get there is mainly where I'm, focused on. So SIs and partners and everything to bring it to the cloud is not a trivial thing, right? So you're bringing something that's 5, 10, 15 years old, full of customizations. Trying to get it to the cloud is not an easy process. So I would say that the goal is cloud ERP. The goal, and one of the goals, is cloud ERP. So I agree with the SaaS vendors in that case, right? And some of them, maybe all of them, are trying to force you to go to the cloud because you don't have to worry about the old versions of the on-prem, right? So that's their vision. So that's what they would say was, we'll take care of all that modernization stuff for you. But it's not really completely true.
What's missing?
The how do you get there? And what do you bring across? What do you bring across, right? So out of those customizations. What do you choose to bring across? Do you choose to bring the whole thing over? Do you rely on an SI to do that implementation for you, rather than the vendor, and just let the vendor maintain the cloud platform for you? So that's kind of how, I think it's the process to get there, which I think is different.
Do you see business requirements changing? Like, you would think that a ERP vendor is creating sort of a best practice within the product themselves, at least from their perspective. And then, then you were just talking about sort of defining the to-be state before you move there, and you're managing that transition as an SI or partner. And that's where things can go off the rails, right? But I'm just wondering, sort of, okay, let's say that both of those things sort of in place. You're sort of, the enterprise now is really a moving target. Back when I got out of college, the enterprise hadn't, like the one I joined was 110 years old when I joined it. So not a lot had changed at National Cash Register, over 110 years. But
you
now
worked at NCR.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Okay.
But in any case, so nothing changed back then, and now everything is changing so rapidly that can the thing you're even trying to put in place be applicable once it's in place? I mean, how much of change have you seen in how business requirements are changing as these projects even unfold?
Yeah, I mean, it's been actually kind of radical change in the last few years, even though it's the vendors are pretty much the same, right? And they're upgrading their software, but so the functionality has changed quite a bit. But I think what's affecting it is AI is coming. So AI has made a big difference in what you can do, and the ways you can automate, like robotic process automation, things you can do with your processes. So that I think has made a huge difference. And even in the last year and a half, it's changed a lot, and so companies increasingly have that pressure to do something about AI, right? Because everybody else is supposed to be doing that, and the vendors are pushing that hard. So what do you do about that? And that technology is changing very fast. So it's almost like you check it on a weekly basis, and it's like, how do I implement AI? Well, I implemented AI 3 months ago, but it's completely different now.
I was just thinking, so you put your air italics around something, but you also need them around AI, right? Because what does that mean, and what does it mean today versus what did it mean 3 months ago? So what if I'm following this, not only is there business change, but there's technology change, and both of these things are happening, and so there's got to be this massive synchronization gap between the two, right? So I can now do things I couldn't do before because of AI, but does that really fit our business model? Given all the other factors that we're solving for, ERP is more of a support infrastructure for the definition of the business than the other way around.
Yeah, and budget too, right?
Right.
And budget's an issue, and how do you prioritize that budget? When you're looking at things, I think the companies are having, the reason why they're having trouble with AI is that it's something that is changing fast, and it's also something that isn't necessarily necessary for their business. I think they've been convinced by vendors that it is, and they should focus on it. Whereas, with doing something like, let's just say, a lot of ERP implementations originally, they dealt with analytics, BI analytics, things like that. A database, a data lake, all those things, data warehouse came later, right after they had the ERP all installed. So years of that, and they're only getting to their analytics and their KPIs and their benchmarks and all of that until the end of the process. I think that what people should be thinking about before they think about AI actually is analytics, BI and analytics, and getting a data lake in place, for instance. And that way you can deal with multiple ERP systems. And Thomas, you and I know, it's basically like any company of any size, let's say 500 million and up in size, has multiple ERP systems, right? And they might have like an SAP at corporate. They might have a bunch of divisions. They might have, they're working with a PE firm and they buy a company and that has a different ERP system. Some dead, some not. Some are off support, some not. So they have this whole huge hodgepodge. And what they struggle to do, or what they have not prioritized, is getting all that data from all these various sources into some sort of data warehouse, data lake, where they can do analytics on it. Now, analytics is not, I mean, there's many vendors out there, you can use Power BI or Tableau or whatever to do this analytics work and set up your KPIs for your business that pulls in data from everywhere, including spreadsheets, by the way. I mean, there's a lot of companies that have a lot of spreadsheets out there, right, that are doing various things, particularly like financial people, like your CFO and everything. I used to do finance consulting, so I know they're all using spreadsheets. If you can bring in some data from spreadsheets into your data lake or data warehouse, then you can also report on that. So I think that should be a really high priority. That should be a priority in the beginning of an ERP modernization. That's a thing you should always set up first, okay, or amongst the first things that you do. A second thing that you should set up is so all your reports and things like that, your customizations. A lot of times in the old days, you would customize SAP, ECC, or something like that, or BON, or whatever this case may be. And a lot of your customizations, maybe even half or so, are reports, right? So you can take all those reports and you can just, once you have this analytics platform in place, you can take those and eliminate those, right? So when you're bringing the system up, even if you do a brownfield, you just eliminated a whole bunch of customizations, which will really help out. Bring down the complexity of what you're trying to do in a modernization effort. Okay. Another thing that I think is very important, that is probably downplayed a little bit, is in an ERP modernization, is an iPaaS. So integration platform as a service, right? Having something like that in place where you can use APIs and you can do things, where with various different ERP systems that are feeding it, and feed it into an iPaaS and make some modern applications. So I think that's important. The third thing I think is important is the possibility to do microservices now. So microservices are, and sometimes called composable applications. My friend Jan Bon has a company called Rapid that does it. And then there's BTP, and there's, things for SAP as well. There's ServiceNow, although ServiceNow is kind of expensive, right? It's possible to use ServiceNow, say, with an SAP. And also Jan Bon has done the same thing with Rapid, is built it on top of ECC so that you can modernize applications without upgrading to the cloud, or you can postpone your migration to the cloud, right? So it's being forced. But you can also pick up third party, like a Rimini Street or something like that, right? That will take care of your support for SAP ECC, let's say, and you can prolong it past the deadline, and then you can focus on some of these other things. So these are just some thoughts that I had. I'm trying to come up with a vision of what a large company would do, an enterprise grade company would do with this hodgepodge of ERP systems and all other kinds of systems that they have, how they would kind of proceed with an ERP modernization.
Now, these seem to be all technical preconditions, especially the one, we need to do something with AI.
Yeah.
Asked to the CIO probably even gives me kind of the shivers, because first of all, it is kind of, fuzzy.
Yes.
And second, something with AI is also not targeted. So,
Right.
so whatever you do from an IT perspective should be informed, or needs to be informed actually, by what the business needs and requires. So
Right.
what, besides these technical preconditions, what business preconditions do you see for performing a successful ERP transformation or business transformation?
Well, I would say certainly the data is an issue. I don't know if that's a technological issue. I mean, there are tools that you can use to clean up data, right? So the data needs to be clean in order to get good outputs, let's say, of generative AI, for instance. So that the data needs to be looked at from a business standpoint. Is the data clean, first of all? What kind of decisions are coming out of it, or what kind of outputs are coming out of it? Are there any hallucinations or whatever? I don't know all the terms for the AI, but if it's making hallucinations, if it's leading to bad decisions, then it's time to clean up that data. I would say also if you take something like RPA, for example, very good application is with AP invoicing, right? Matching approved invoicing, scanning invoices into the system, and all of that. So, but I would say if you're trying to apply AI to a process that's not necessary or that's wrong, you should fix it before applying RPA AI. I'll give you an example. So you have various customers in an ERP database, right? They're spelled slightly differently. They're in a different region, whatever. So let's say you've got 10 S.E. Johnsons or something like that, right? In your database. They each have their own credit limits. They each have their own exceeding credit limits or whatever. You feed that into AI. AI tells you have 10 different customers instead of one. And they might not be individually customers that you want to do business with, because they're frequently behind on their invoice payments or whatever the case may be. If you let AI make that determination, it's incorrect. And you could lose a huge customer that actually is paying well at the corporate level, and because you have bad data, it gave you a bad decision.
Isn't the data problem caused by a process problem, probably?
Yes.
Or an organizational structure problem? So what immediately comes to mind in my simple mind, well, German, simple, is that decentralized autonomy leads to decentralized data buckets, which lead to inconsistent data.
Yes, it does. And they feed each other back and forth, right? Because if you had a bad process, it's processing bad data. So it's really inflicting or self-enforcing.
I just want to take the other side of that for a second. And when you talked about how there's so much data in spreadsheets today that could be that's kind of like a bottom-up approach in terms of like what data should we even be thinking about, right? As opposed to your typical top-down approach. A lot of times these spreadsheets exist because the system that I'm supposed to be using doesn't allow me to do the thing that I need to do at my level of the organization. And so you've got all these exception processing, if you will, even though it might be the core of the way that this particular region of the company has to do business or whatever, right?
Right, like the workaround.
Right, exactly. So to me, there's like a metadata aspect to this problem where it's not just whether the data is clean or not, is in what context is this data usable, and in what context is it not appropriate to feed into any downstream thing, whether it's an algorithm or just the human process of making a decision. So it seems like the data problem is I just read this morning. We have 32,000 times as much data that we produce every year now than we did in the year 2000. So we're just getting problems with data that we've never had before. And one of them, I think, is that it's not as simple as is this data clean or not? It's should we even be using it in this context? And the level of contextualization, needs to be far more sort of multidimensional than in the past. What do you think of that? Does that make sense to you?
It does. And structured versus unstructured is also an issue. And can you put it into a database? I mean, because most of the reporting databases are pretty much structured data,
right?
Feeding that. But there are engines, and I think you guys have an engine that deals with unstructured data, don't you? Is a particular
Logic?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's we are really, what's interesting is when you take unstructured data in, you're structuring it, like we structure it so that you can then do something with it, so that it's actionable. So it's producing structured data, and it's also causing unstructured data that wasn't possible before, which is basically embedded expertise. So you've got embedded expertise that Thomas and I don't have, and for a particular decision, we're going to want to involve you in that, and then you apply that. It's not only just unstructured, it's also like analog. It's not digital yet. So that's a gap where, so in my view, the next level of complex decisioning is, well, the data we need is in the expertise of individuals, not a system, which kind of leads me. So I've got a really bright friend that said this about very large systems implementations a while ago, and it really got me thinking, which was that especially where there's a lot of stakeholders involved, and it's there's a fair amount of this sort of analog and unstructured data that's involved in these sorts of decisions. He said, his experience was the way that you make that decision can be as important, if not more important, than the decision itself. So Oracle and SAP might both be good enough. The real magic is in the Oracle got 15 people involved in this decision in a really sort of collaborative way, whereas SAP didn't. And so the level of buy-in from the participants was so much higher, and that level of buy-in translates directly into how successful this thing is going to be, because you still have to deal with human beings to get the outcome you're looking for, right? And if I feel like I've been left out of a process or marginalized in some way, then maybe I don't raise my hand when somebody else might have and said, hey, have you thought about doing it this way, in response to that roadblock you just ran into? What do you think of that idea?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a factor. It's definitely a factor. And I think that the high failure rates, I mean, you talk about McKinsey has always maintained that 70%, which causes me to cringe every time I see it, because I just see it as way higher than that. I mean, the success rate way higher than 30%. At least that's been my experience in my career over, 25 plus years.
Maybe you got only the easy projects.
Not all of them were easy. I did have one, kind of an example though, and I think that what Pete, you were just saying it is kind of applicable. This was a large oil and natural gas pump valve seal type company, like huge one. And we did the implementation with, I think it was before OCM was cool. So that was one of the things that we didn't have in this project. We had a bunch of really talented consultants. We didn't have very good leadership. So we had, they called it the dream team. This was back in Bond days, that I was on the dream team. That's funny. But we didn't really have, I guess, strong leadership. We also didn't have buy-in from the people at the plant level. And I think this is part of what McKinsey's analysis of 70% deals with, and why they fail so often is because they don't enlist. They talk about executive management support. Well, yeah, of course. we're going through an ERP modernization. We're going through a digital transformation. Are we on board? Yes, we are. But how on board are the PMs and the plant managers when it hits the road, right? How on board are they? Because in this case, they were not on board. So what happened was you get a constant battle to get people to show up for training and to go through the processes. No, we don't want to do that. You know, we're going out to eat, you know, and things like that. It really was very difficult because the top management had not pushed down their vision or whatever, or said to the plant manager, you will do this or you're out. You know? And the key users didn't have, because the plant manager didn't have any stake in the game, the key users balked too. So did we go live? Yes, we did. Did we go live right around time? Yes, we did. Did we go, you know, about budget? Yes, we did. Was it a success? No, not in my opinion. It wasn't, and it's hard to take. It was one of my early projects before I started my own business, and I took to heart a lot of lessons out of there, and one was management and getting, you know, buy-in from the lower levels, plant level, key users, even end users have to be on board. They have to be taught. They have to test the system thoroughly. They have to be totally in the mix. The fact that the CEO was for the project doesn't matter at all. Doesn't matter at all to those people, right? They're day in, day out doing their jobs with the old system, and they're not convinced.
Which quite transparently and coincidentally, not that we ever planned this, leads to the question of what is the definition of success. It's part one, and part two is how do I measure that then?
That's
I mean, the SI, the implementation partner, of course, said I'm on time, on budget, on scope, on sort of on quality, check, success.
Yep.
Which probably is not it.
Yeah, that just seems you're positioning that as if it's just table stakes now, and the things that we used to concentrate on aren't nearly enough.
Right. I mean, I would say probably that success is all those things, yes, but also achieving your business objectives that you set for the project, right? Getting better with your KPIs, getting return out of this, getting better, faster, cheaper, whatever is the case, pleasing your customers better, you know. And it really spans ERP, but ERP is kind of a backbone, right? That you get like an e-commerce, for example. How do you could really please your customers by offering an e-commerce solution, right? Something really nice that they can do on their phones and, you know, and things like that. If you build microservices, could make something really pleasing or something that you would adopt as a user that belies the ugliness underneath, right? The ugliness, you don't have to enter a PO into the old on-premise system that's still there because you're on your way to the cloud, but you haven't got there yet. Do it through a microservice on your phone. Boop, 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 put a PO in, or whatever the case may be. I'm just using POs as an example.
Yeah, but still, so we mentioned now a few of them. So of course the project needs to get delivered sort of
on time, on budget.
Successfully. Then we need buy-in at various levels.
Yep.
So we need the management, obviously, the sponsorship. We need to have the people who actually work with the new system. Then what I heard is it's always good to have some KPIs that you want to address and change with it.
Yes.
Is that a complete, or is this a sufficient list of success criteria, or what else do you see?
I think fully trained, however you measure that, and maybe that's part of your OCM plan. I mean, you have to have an organizational change management plan, which we didn't have in that project. We didn't even know about it. Like, I don't even know if I ran across the term until about 10 years ago. It wasn't a thing. And certainly we didn't have any kind of automated tools to measure it, because now you can get automated tools that can do the survey, produce a little spider graph of how you're doing and stuff like that, right? No workflow. There wasn't any workflow, so that there wasn't any automation of workflows. So you took pretty much what came out of the ERP.
Yeah,
so now you can automate a lot of those workflows.
I wrote down level of engagement when you were talking about just sort of buy-in. It's really more than some sort of intellectual. Yep, we definitely do need to do this. It's are you testing what I asked you to test before we have to go live, so that we make the mistakes now versus later, which is going to impact these KPIs and all the other stuff that we talked about. So that, we on this particular podcast, we talk about engagement an awful lot, because we're always talking about this customer life cycle from one angle or another. And here's an example of just engagement in general being critical to the success of realizing some outcome. And it's more than just, do you have buy-in? It really that has to translate into level of engagement.
Yeah, I mean, they don't even talk about that. When you read the McKinsey, nowhere in there is key user and end user engagement. It's not in there.
They're an executive management consultancy, so why should they talk about?
That's right. They're just talking to the C-levels anyway, right? Everything's great with the C-levels.
Okay, just kidding here. So let's try to look at it from the other angle. So now there are modernization projects, and they do happen. Some of them even need to happen, which implies that not all of them must happen. So what do you think as key preconditions for business preconditions to engage into an ERP modernization project at all? I mean, one that I can easily imagine is SAP or Oracle or any other vendor says, okay, this really is out of support, so you better get into something more modern. But this can't be the sole driver, and shouldn't be.
No, I mean, we talked about data, cleaning up data. That should definitely be a precondition. We talked about business process.
No. So the question is rather not a technical precondition. So why should I go into an ERP modernization project at all?
Oh, at all?
Yeah. So why do it? So because I mean, I now could draw the picture that says an ERP system is quite a stable system. The processes are deliberately built for me that are in my instance of the system, so they are perfect. Look at banks. They are core systems. They are core banking systems. They are basically there since forever, since COBOL. Yeah, they are still running COBOL, and they don't change at all. So why should I engage into a modernization project at all?
Well, if you're a bank, maybe not. I don't know.
Well, then there are those fintechs who eat their lunch, but this might be a trigger.
That's true.
But that's not because of the ERP system.
Well, I think several reasons. From an IT perspective, it's if you have a cloud ERP system, there are a lot of advantages. So you can get all the upgrades happen automatically. Well, you have to test them, of course, but they happen automatically. It's in the cloud so that other applications that are in the cloud that you can connect with more easily than connecting with an on-premise system, which requires an integration of some type, like an API or something like that. So it's easier for a cloud ERP to communicate with other cloud systems, of which there are a lot. CRM, for example, Salesforce, connecting those. So connection is a big deal. And I don't know if I can make the cost argument. You certainly have cost savings in terms of an IT department, which has a lot of, hardware upgrades and, and things like that, and possibly saving people, although that, they would say, well, you reallocate those people into more useful tasks. But there is always an aspect of headcount reduction if you're talking IT department versus a cloud ERP platform, which is, you don't need a lot of those people. So there is possibly a cost reduction, but it might be offset by the SaaS costs versus the on-prem. You already paid for it. You've got your support or whatever, this 20 ticking along at 20% or whatever it is compared to a SaaS cost. It's CapEx versus OpEx, so there might be some saving.
That SaaS and PaaS providers and IaaS providers want to earn some money too. Yeah, so that I have heard about that before.
That's right. So that's always an issue, but I think it's more the it's not so much cost aspects. It's getting applications onto the cloud so they communicate with other applications on the cloud, and then building out a better operation, a more efficient operation for your company so that you can achieve competitive advantage versus somebody else. And the way you do it and the way you measure it makes a lot of difference, because these ERP systems, right, they all do kind of the same thing. And so if you just installing an ERP system versus your competition is not going to give you competitive advantage necessarily. You're getting it from the way you set it up, the way you automate your processes and things like that. So that's important as well.
So bottom line is do a business case.
Yeah, you have to do a business case. Absolutely. It's not cut and dry.
We've got time for one more question, I think. And one thing I thought was interesting was like sort of where and when do you think a global SI is a preferable approach to a regional one or a local one, and vice versa? Like where does who fit the best? Who's the natural winner, if you will? Just pick a scenario and say why you think one of them is the best for that.
Well, it depends on the size of the organization, doesn't it?
Yeah, I thought that was the main driver, but give me some more.
That is, just the size of the organization and the cost that you're willing to.
So let me rephrase it. Is a global SI more likely to have expertise that a regional one doesn't, or because they're so good at sharing the collective intelligence of the firm that if you brought in, one of the top four, that was going to be a very different experience from a depth standpoint and a process standpoint and all that than a regional one? Or are they not that good at leveraging the size that they have?
There's certainly an aspect if you're dealing with a multinational corporation, an SI has an advantage, I would say, because of their experience with those type and size companies. Regional can be very good if you're regional, if you're the company you're implementing is like, say, within the US.
Does that go back to like this level of engagement thing? Like the regional guy is more interested in a regional customer. So it becomes more about that sort of level of attention as opposed to depth of global experience, as an example, which is probably not applicable to a regional customer.
I think regional, we're a regional player. I think we do a really good job of the customer experience and the customer success. I think that we're very hands-on. We're very right there locally. We don't send in a bunch of young whiz kids and and start billing. We have very experienced people. We work with good third parties at times. We're very close to the software companies that we support in NetSuite. So we're very close to them, and take advantage of their expertise and their partner partner managers and things like that. So I think we do a really good job for regional. We have relations with that we can handle more international type projects, but I think because of those things that we can be superior to an SI that's not going to give you that kind of attention, and they're going to send in a lot of. I've seen it before.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe, actually, in some cases, like when I was working with a company and we were implementing one software, and then they decide to switch to another software. I won't say which. They sent in, I think it was Accenture sent in like 25 consultants. And I saw them in a conference room sitting there, typing away on their computers and I don't know, getting on TikTok or whatever they were doing. And I was thinking to myself, these poor people, we had a team of six people.
Yeah.
When we were doing their implementation, and we did it well. The issue, they didn't have an issue with us. They had an issue with the software company.
Yeah.
So that's why they decided to switch. But I felt bad for them.
Yeah.
I really felt bad for them.
Right.
They said, I'm sure they came in and said, we're the only ones that can do this.
Right.
You have two options, and we know which options they are. You have two options, and you choose one of them, and we'll send the guys tomorrow.
Yeah, you can see it coming. Okay, well, thank you so much, Dan. This is all the time we've got. You've survived the hot seat.
All right.
Yes, congratulations. For our audience, if you think you have what it takes to be in the hot seat, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. That is your In the Hot Seat episode for today. Thanks so much for being with us. I'm Pete Smith.
Yeah, and I'm Thomas Wiebernight, and you tune in next time for different faces, different topics, different perspectives, more fun as we put somebody else in the hot seat or get into the hot seat ourselves.